All righty, well, good morning, everyone. If you're new to Grace, or this is your first time visiting us, if you're a guest, we want to welcome you. Thank you so much for joining us. If we haven't met, my name is Zane Gunter. I'm the college coordinator actually at our Southwood campus, but it's a joy to be with you all. Thank you for receiving me. This is really a privilege. I have a lot of community, a lot of close friends here at Creekside, and so I really do count it a privilege to contribute to what God is doing here and to participate in it firsthand with you this morning. So I'm sure with the holidays ending, there's a lot of mixed feelings. Maybe for some of you, you're like, I'm glad it's done. Traveling is done, we're home, and the Christmas decor is already packed away. Maybe some of you are still clinging to it. Really for me, the one thing that I feel like I am clinging to for the holiday season, besides just time with family and a break to be with them, is just Christmas movies. A lot of the classics. I've just learned that those are such a comfort to me, and they're just very nostalgic. And so, of course, you have the classics like Miracle on 34th Street, and It's a Wonderful Life, and White Christmas. You're also going to have like the newer classics. You have Elf and Home Alone and National Lampoon, Christmas Vacation, just must watch whenever you're home for the holidays. And it just had me thinking about movies that are a comfort to me, and this is gonna feel like a big 180, but I thought about Karate Kid, the 1984 version. This is not me making a case for that Karate Kid is a Christmas movie. I believe that Die Hard is. I'm a recent convert to that belief. If you want to deconvert me, I could be swayed, so you can find me afterwards. But I was thinking about Karate Kid, and I love it, but I also just love the plot of the film. And so if you're familiar with it, I'll refresh you. If not, this is new to you, but it focuses on the character of Danny LaRusso. He's this young man who moves from East Coast to West Coast, and whenever he's there in California, he just becomes a victim of bullying from these students at a karate dojo called Cobra Kai. And one day, whenever he is receiving the recipient of bullying, this man comes, and his name is Mr. Miyagi, and he's a maintenance worker, but he also somehow happens to be a karate master or a sensei. And so he jumps in this moment. He I guess defeats, is that the right word to use? Defeats the bullies, and Danny is just like, whoa, that was awesome. And teach me that thing. I want to do that thing so I can fend off those bullies, because that was awesome. And so eventually, Mr. Miyagi agrees to take him under his tutelage, and Danny's like, great, I'm going to learn those moves that he used. And Mr. Miyagi says, paint my fence. You can sand my deck. You can wax my car. And of course, I think as most of us would be, he's frustrated. He's like, this isn't karate. This isn't what I signed up for. I want to do great and big things like what you just did. But it comes to find out that later on, whenever Danny gets put into a karate competition and he faces these guys from Cobra Kai, that those seemingly small, insignificant, mundane tasks that Mr. Miyagi had him do were actually the foundation, the groundwork that allowed him to do the karate that won him the tournament. And so it's just really this incredible plot of something you wouldn't suspect, something seemingly small that really had a significant effect. And I bring that up because I think that also as Christians, believers in Jesus, that our lives to some extent follow a similar plot. That if you're a believer in Jesus, that you have been redeemed, you've been purchased from slavery and bondage to sin and to death, and that you have been justified, you've been made in a right relationship with God. And I believe that as Christians that we want to have a fitting and right response, that I want to faithfully follow God in light of this great thing that he's done in my life and things that he continues to do. I want to participate with him. Teach me, God, how to walk with you faithfully. And as we do that, I think there's, especially in the new year, this new season where maybe there's been some rhythms that we had at the beginning of 2025 that have fallen off because life happens and we're busy, or this was a harder year than we could have ever anticipated. And I don't have the same zeal and fervor or structure as I would have liked to have continued throughout the year. And so in this new year, even for myself, there's great ambitions that I have, things I want to do with God, to faithfully follow him and walk with him and fulfill what he asked us to do of loving him and loving those around me. There's a desire to redevote ourselves to him. If you went to church camp growing up, there was usually a final night of the week or the weekend. There was extended worship, and there was an altar call. And if you were like me, you went up there every single summer of youth group, and you rededicated and say, whenever I go home, I'm never sinning again. This is the year. I promise, this is the year. I feel like I really am gonna do it. I'm not gonna sin anymore after camp this year. That was just an experience that I had growing up. And now we also have other ambitions. We want to read the Bible in a year. Tara Lee Cobble is going to be playing in all of our cars very soon as we listen to Bible Recap. We want to be more generous with our finances. We want to be more hospitable with our home. We want to join a Bible study or just really recommit to being invested, being participants and contributors of our community group. We want to finally find accountability in confession. And these are all great and well-intended goals that I hope that we all have similar things that we are desiring to do in this new year. But I also want to put something before you to consider that maybe you hadn't considered of something that we can do in this next year to work with God, to faithfully follow him. And here it is. Practice not complaining. Practice not complaining. It probably didn't make your list of New Year's resolutions. If it did, congrats to you. This is one that has convicted me a lot recently and one I'm considering more. And it feels very anticlimactic. It's not very flashy. It's not something that's gonna get commented on and reposted on social media like, love that for you, amen. That's what I'm gonna be doing for my New Year's resolution. But much like the chores that Mr. Miyagi had Danny do, it's this really small thing, not complaining, that can have a great impact on our lives. And I think considering how often we complain and what we complain about and who we complain to is something that can make perhaps a more significant impact than even some of the other great goals and ambitions that we have for ourselves in this new year. And I believe that's true because I think it's something that can truly set us apart and make us look very different from a culture in a society that it just seems like complaining and venting is just kind of woven into the fabric of it. I can almost guarantee, it happened to me yesterday, that as you go back to work or you see your friends again or your neighbors after the holidays, that some of the first words that you're gonna say are gonna be some form of a complaint, maybe small, but it might be a conversation like, hey, how were the holidays for you? How was Christmas? And you say, good, but I'm so glad it's over. 2 days, one night with my in-laws, with my parents is enough. I think I'm fed up with them. I have my fill for the next couple of months. The kids are driving me crazy. I think we're just gonna go to Goodwill and drop off their gifts. I'm ready for school to start up again. I'm ready for daycare to start up again. I think those are just the words that come off our mouth naturally because I get it. We just got back from an 8-day trip with our kiddos, and we have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old and a 3-month-old. And the first thing I said to our neighbor who was feeding our dogs was, she was like, how was the holiday? And we were like, we're so glad it's over. And it's honest and real, but it really just kind of sets a tone for the conversation already of one of complaints. And so most of our conversations are gonna start off that way, and if someone complains to us, it's likely we're gonna probably try to relate to them in some way, say something that's complaining. And if this is you, I'm not judging you again, because I tend to do this myself. We live in a culture where we complain to break the ice or just to relate with somebody, whether they're a stranger or a coworker or a friend. And if someone doesn't complain when we talk to them, they don't complain back, it's like, oh, you think you're a goody two-shoes. You think you're better than me. You're being fake and inauthentic because I bet your life isn't all dandy like you present it to be. Why can't you just complain with me and make me feel better about complaining? I know that I'm guilty of doing that. But what if not complaining, it's not about a lack of authenticity, but rather it's about being a bright, shining light in a culture where we can shine in the dark shadows that are of just cynicism and pessimism and negativity. And so today we're gonna talk about this, and we're gonna be in the book of Philippians, chapter 2. So if you have your copy of the scriptures, you can open up there, Philippians 2. Not the probably most common known verse in Philippians, but we're gonna be in the passage after that, starting in verse 12. Philippians 2, 12 through 18. And we're gonna see today how we as Christians can shine and really stand out in a world of shadows and complaining and negativity. And as we read, Paul is gonna give us this outline. Paul is the author of Philippians, and he's gonna tell us what it is we need to do He's gonna say we need to work with God as he is trying to work in us and sanctify us to look like Christ. And how we do that is by not complaining, not grumbling, not arguing. And the result of that is that we get to be lights in a dark world. It's kind of what it's gonna look like for us today. And so we're gonna start off by reading in verse 12, and it says this: "So then, my dear friends, just as you've always obeyed, not only in my presence, but even more in my absence, continue working out your salvation with awe and reverence." And so Paul begins this section with "so that" or "therefore," depending on your translation. And what these words are, it's a conjunction. And more specifically, it's a logical inference, which if you're not an English major like me, do not fret. It is basically connecting words that have a logical flow that conclude what was just said. And so if you look back to Philippians 2, 1 through 11, it's this beautiful poem, this beautiful passage where Paul is describing the humility of Jesus and how he humbles himself by coming in the form of a man and a servant. He's obedient to the point of death on a cross, and out of his humility, he becomes glorified. And so Paul is writing about the obedience of Jesus. And so by having this logical inference, Paul is basically saying to the Corinthians, as Christ was obedient, you too ought to be obedient. But what is it that we are to be obedient to? What is Paul calling the Philippians to do? And he says their obedience should be shown by working out their salvation. And this is always, this verse 12 has always been something I've stumbled over. I've heard it taught different ways, and even just hearing someone say, work out your own salvation, already kind of throws up some red flags of like, Paul, are you saying I need to work for my salvation? This kind of goes against what I feel like is right, but it's the Bible, so maybe this is what it says and I should do this. But notice that Paul doesn't say you need to work for your salvation. He says work out your salvation. And before we even begin to unpack that, I think it's good to practice a helpful Bible study tool of where we just look at a word in its context and we understand what it means in that context, because context matters even for the word that's the same. For instance, the word dog, a lot of different meanings. It can mean canine, like the pet that you have. It can mean your homie, your friend. You can be like, hey, Benjamin's my dog. And he is. But you can also be like, a dog can be someone who has grit or determination. Like Cassius Howell, man, he's a dog. You know, or that guy on the basketball court, he's a dog. He's determined. He's gonna grind and work. Or it can be a slang for just your stinky feet. You know, why you have your dogs out. You know, you didn't know it was gonna be a Gen Z slang lesson today. Or maybe another one that, this is probably a dialogue between spouses, but hey, let's be on time today. What does that mean, on time? Does that mean let's arrive early to the activity or the function or to church? Does that mean that we arrive like approximately around the time that it kind of starts, like when the first song is kind of playing and we can get our seats? Or does that kind of mean a more on the nose thing of like, you better not be the reason that we're late again today. Let's be on time today. And so again, different phrases, different words can mean different things in different contexts. And when we see a word that's used a lot, like salvation, we probably think of it in the context that it's most widely used, of being saved, being justified. And that's true, it's a common usage of that word, but you can also easily look in the Gospels and see where Jesus saves Peter from drowning. And that's also a use of salvation. And so in this particular instance, Paul is saying that the salvation in this sense is referring to a judgment that will come on the day when Christ returns, and that'll be the result of our sanctification being complete and leading to our glorification. And so you have been, if you're a believer in Jesus, you've been justified. You've been set right with God. That's a one-time, once-for-all event that's happened. But there's also the idea of salvation considering the full breadth of justification and sanctification across your whole life that leads to glorification. And that's really the sense that Paul is talking about here, is the full breadth of your sanctification. And so it's a gift. Your justification has already happened. It's a gift, but it's a gift that you take responsibility for, and you enjoy it, and you experience it, and you explore it across the rest of your life. This is seen in marriage. You get married on one day in a big event, but it takes the rest of your life to experience it and to explore it and to enjoy it and to learn it. And you have to work at it day by day. That's the reality of marriage. And so essentially Paul is saying, work out, or even better, work at it. Work at your sanctification for the rest of your life. And that's really the first point that he's making of what ought we to do. And it's this: you need to work with God as he works in us. That's what Paul is calling the Philippians to do. Work with God as he works in you. And the reason this is so important to Paul is that he can't make the Philippians grow in sanctification, look more like Christ. At the time that Paul is writing this, he is actually locked up in a Roman prison. And so he's like, I'm not even there physically. I've gotten this letter to you. And he's also very aware that there's a reality that he may never even get to see the Philippians, this beloved church, again. He knows that his imprisonment might result in his death. And so he's telling the Philippians in a very real way of, I know you were obedient when I was with you, but especially now when I'm not with you, you need to work with God as he's working in you. You need to, in a sense, take the reins of your faith and work with God towards your sanctification because he can't do it for them. And so I mentioned earlier that we have a 2-year-old son, Briar, a 3-month-old daughter named Steely, and it's been really fun to revisit some of the baby things that I didn't forget, but just haven't done in a while. And so one of those things is tummy time. And so my daughter, obviously, I think my children, just because I have a large head and they inherited that, have relatively strong necks, but they're not fully able to support themselves at 3 months. And so you still have to, hold my daughter like this, which now that I have a daughter, I wish I could do this for forever, just to hold her right here. But so that she can support her own head one day, I have to lay her on her stomach, and she has to do this little arch your back thing and strengthen all these muscles in your neck and your back so that one day she can be a fully developed human and she can turn her neck and support her head like you and me. And it would actually be unkind of me, unkind of any parent, to not do that. Even though it's hard to watch your child get frustrated and throw a fit and whine as they do that. It's right that my child grows and develops properly and fully, and part of that requires me setting her down and letting her develop those muscles on her own. And in a sense, I don't know if I'm coining this term, but I think a lot of us need to practice a spiritual tummy time, that we need to maybe be set down and not be held by these supports and lean on some of the things and people that we have done to for a long time. We need people, but there's a sense where maybe we've clung to certain things to a point where it's detrimental to our own growth. That for some of us, maybe you've attended the same church that your parents did, and that's great, but maybe you've just attended this church or any church because it's what they did, and you don't know what your church believes, you don't know what they stand for, you're not a member, you're not a contributing member to the church body, you just kind of attend, and it's just because that's your parents' faith. Or maybe you pray the same prayers that your mom prayed to you, and they're wonderful prayers because she's a saint. But you don't have your own rich and vibrant and alive prayer life that should be fitting of a believer, much like a conversation between spouses. Or maybe for even some of us, we rely solely on the 3 points of a sermon to tell us how we ought to live our lives that week, and that's our bread for the week. Or maybe we rely on the insights of a Bible study leader or a trusted mentor to tell us what 1 Peter means. Whatever they said, I trust them. This is what it must mean. I don't need to do any more research, no more reading. That's what they said. Or maybe for some of us, we rely on the prayers of our spouse to support and sustain our spiritual relationship with God. That there is no personal relationship outside of that. We just rely on someone else. And I don't think if that's you, I don't think you're the only one. I think we've all struggled with that in different seasons of life, whether you're going off to college or whether your children have left home or you're just in a new season of life. But there are moments where we have to say, I need to work with God myself as he works in me. And this is something that only I can do. I need to choose to join a church, to show up and participate in Bible study in the community group, to set aside time to pray and practice gratitude, to learn how to read and study God's word, to know the gospel, to know how to give a defense for the things that I believe in, or to invite friends into my home and strangers into my home so that I can practice hospitality. There comes a point where we have to do this for ourselves. Yet, know that God has not abandoned us to do this on our own. We work with God as he works in us, as it says, with fear and trembling. Fear and trembling, meaning that we rely on God and his strength to complete this work in us. For when we're filled with fear and trembling or reverence and respect for God, we humble ourselves before him and we acknowledge a few key things: that we serve a holy, a powerful, and a loving God, but also that we have a very real and powerful and lying enemy who is constantly working against us and God to sanctify us. And lastly, that we are willing to work with God, but we are often weak. And we depend on God for all that we need. And when we acknowledge these things, we can be comforted by the truth that God is, as Paul says, bringing forth or working in us both the desire and effort to do what he pleases. Many times we have the desire to do what's right, but we just lack the ability. We lack the energy. I want to go to the gym, but I stayed up way too late last night, or I'm tired, or I'm sore, or I want to read my Bible, but I'd rather just watch a show and kind of clock out or listen to a podcast that's more interesting to me. And there's even times when we don't seem to want to do what is right. We don't even have the desire for it. And in these times, I think it's important that we especially practice humility and say, God, will you give me the desire to do what is right? Give me the desire. Will you stir up within me a desire to say yes to you and yes to your ways and yes to serving others? Will you enable me to do what you desire to do in and through me, so that I can love you and I can love those that you've entrusted to my care? And so for you today, how do you begin to work with God as he's completing a work in you that he began? I think, again, we just need to be humble of confessing the ways in which we have not had a desire to own our faith, confessing a lack of zeal, a lack of fervor. Or maybe for some of you, and this is often where I fall, confessing the ways that I've tried to sanctify myself. I've tried to go it alone and do it myself and just schedule my life and discipline myself in a way that I'm the one who's bringing about sanctification in my own life. You need to confess to that. Ask God to give you the desire and the ability to work in you. And then also I'd encourage you, I'm sure many of you have thought about this, but choose a spiritual discipline. It's not enough to just remove these negative things in our life and just hope something good grows. We have to replace it with something that's rich and vibrant and alive. And so there's different spiritual practices. There's things that we do, that we draw closer to God by doing something like prayer or studying scripture or meditating on it or memorizing it. There's service or generosity, evangelism, worship, community is even a practice like that. And there's also practices where this is really kind of, if you fall in the line of really trying hard to sanctify yourself, doing habits of subtraction. Maybe you need to fast from certain foods, or maybe you need to abstain from certain types of media. Maybe you need to have more time in silence and solitude by yourself, where you're not seeking the affirmation of your spouse or of your children or of man or a boss. Or maybe practice simplicity. You got a lot of money for Christmas and you already have a list of things you want to buy. Maybe you say, I really don't need all those things that much. Maybe I can use this to practice generosity. Maybe that's a sanctification thing for you. Whatever it might be, I pray that we'll find a way to work with God as he works in us. And then Paul also gives another tip of how we can work with God as he works in us. And he says this in verse 14. Small verse. Do everything without grumbling or arguing. And that's it. Again, very anticlimactic. It's like you're reading verse 12 and 13. You're like, yes, I want to work with you, God. I want to have this zeal, this fervor, this dependence on you. I'll work with you, God. And then Paul says, well, don't complain. Don't grumble. Don't argue. And this is kind of the part where I'm like, Paul, use your super holy 7-step process to make me more like Jesus. That's what my American mind needs. I need steps. I need tangible progress. But rather than a list of things to do, Paul says, here's this thing I want you to not do, to remove it from your life. And that's to not grumble or argue. That's how he wants to work in us. And there's two ways that he talks about this. He says grumble, and it's really an inward thing. Grumbling is a bad attitude that sometimes gets expressed by complaining. It can even be like a muttering underneath your breath, kind of in a way. But whenever that grows, whenever it matures, and you grumble long enough that it leads sometimes to arguing, a full-on dispute between you and someone else in your life. And now, I ask the question, like, why does Paul give this instruction while talking about sanctification? What does this have to do about my sanctification? I can think of a few reasons why it relates to sanctification. First, think about for yourself, what does grumbling or complaining do to your own heart? What does it do to your sanctification? Does it reflect the character of Jesus? I know that for me, it hardens my heart. For example, I can go from praying, God, make me a patient person, to coming home after work and the house is just chaotic and say, God, why are you testing my patience? And so I want to go to my wife and talk about how our kids are acting, and it makes me just feel hardened and upset, and any sense of like peace and patience and joy in my heart or in my home is just, it's gone. So it affects me, but second, think about what does grumbling or complaining do to those around you? How does it affect their sanctification, their Christ-likeness? Picking up with my example, it makes those around me hardened and angry too. When I complain to my wife, Kelty, not only is my joy and peace getting sapped from me, but now her joy, her peace, or maybe her patience, her good intentions in that moment are sucked as well. So not only is she thinking about, well, the kids have been exhausting me all day. Now she's thinking, well, now Zane's exhausting me all day, and now we're at odds, and it seems like we're trying to work towards a goal together, but we can't see past just our frustration and our complaining. And it just leads the mood and the behavior of our house in a direction that's negative and it's self-destructive. And so as you can tell, not only does grumbling and complaining not lead to halting your sanctification, but it doesn't contribute to the sanctification of those around you, those that you're called to love, those that you're called to present as holy if it's your spouse. And if the end goal, the desire of God, is unity in our community, then not grumbling is really the linchpin, the thing that's gonna hold us together by not complaining. Let's also keep in mind that I don't want the idea here to be, hey, we just need to not complain. We just need to not grumble. Just stop what you're doing, behavior management. But rather it's to become a person who does not complain. It's more about the goal is to be someone filled with the love of God and neighbor so much that you fight against complaining. You resist it. You eliminate it from your heart, from your home, from your workplaces, and you fight for communion, common unity with your people, with your community, with your friends, those around you. And I know I could probably list ongoing examples of how children are a test of sanctification. And they're wonderful, they're great gifts. But one for me in particular in college was always group projects in school. And so, assignments where you get 4 people in a group that haven't ever met, and you're writing a paper together, which I don't know why you'd want to write a collective paper. It makes no sense. Or you're creating a presentation. And it was really a test of my sanctification because already I was like, was the discussion board not enough? Were the exams not enough? Were the daily assignments not enough? And now I have to do a project with people that I've never met, I'll never know again, and we have to try to collaborate on a shared time that we can all meet, which is either 6 a.m. or 11:30 p.m., and now I'm probably gonna get a job that I don't want in the assignment, like the scribe, like the note taker. Everyone's gonna talk at me and I'm gonna have to write. And so I was already in a bad attitude, I was grumbling, and then again, we would argue together as a group. We would argue about when we agreed on meeting. We'd argue about who was gonna bring the right tools and supplies, who was gonna write. We would argue about who was gonna submit the assignment into Canvas. And the end result of most group projects that I was in, and maybe I was the problem, was typically a lower than desired grade, an email to my professor justifying my contribution to the assignment, and just a personal vow of I will never do a group project again. I will find an exemption somehow. And maybe some of you have had similar experiences. You've been on a team where people constantly complain about practices or meetings, or they complain about the people on the team or the boss or the coach or what we're doing or their role on the team. Or you've had an awful mindset towards a project at work. It feels like it's kind of been dumped on you. And why am I working with this department? We don't even work together. Or you've done Christian complaining that we call venting to a friend about a boss or your spouse or someone in your community that drives you crazy. Or we've all probably gone up to Dutch Bros, and you have the college girl who's there smiling, trying to take your order, and you've just dumped all your complaining in that day because she was smiling, and you were like, she'll probably listen and validate me. And how many poor baristas have heard complaining from us? But what if instead of complaining or arguing or venting, we choose to be people who see the good, and we choose to be intentional about speaking positive things, compliments to those around us. Or we choose to diligently do our work with the people that we're working with, on the project that we're working, regardless of the participation or lack of participation from those involved. What if we choose to pray for our boss or people in our community that rub us the wrong way or have grieved us? I'll also say this, there is a time and place to express our grievances. I don't want us to walk away and hear like, Zane is telling me that Philippians 2 says I can never speak a word of any grievances I have. I just have to bottle them all up and become a bitter and angry person, and that's it. I can't ever mutter any grievance I have. I'm not promoting that. I don't think that Paul would even say that you need to become a bitter and inwardly this angry person towards other people. But I do think, if possible, we should try to overlook an offense. Proverbs 19:11 says, it's to one's glory or one's virtue to overlook an offense. So if you can somehow forgive someone or overlook something they said or done to you, that's beneficial to you. But if it is just eating you up and you think about it when you're driving, you think about it when you're eating lunch, you think about it when you're going to bed, then I think that's a case where you need to invite very close, very trusted individuals into your life that can speak into you. And I've done this for myself in my community and a few trusted people in my life where there's a situation where I've gone to them and we can even say it in a very human way. I have a grievance, I want to complain, and I just need you to hear me out in this moment, in the confidentiality, the safety of this trusted relationship. Not a stranger that I'm venting to, but in trusted community, here's my grievance. And I'd love for you to listen to me. And after that, I will gladly receive any truth and correction that you have for me, because maybe I'm way off my rocker and I'm the one who's in the wrong and I need to go seek forgiveness, or maybe I need to go to my brother or sister and I need to tell them that they've hurt my feelings or that I have a disagreement with them, and that would be really honoring to them. And so I hope that as we talk about this, that if there are things that grieve you, that you feel like is a complaint or something that's been done against you or that you dislike that's happening in your community or in your workplace, I think there's a place to talk to the trusted community. I've had guys who literally made me have conversations I did not want to have with people that I did not want to speak to. And they gave me a timeline and they said, we're gonna check in. And I'm so grateful. Looking back, in those moments I was not. But they validated my complaint, but they also said, I think you need to go and seek reconciliation. And so I think that's a healthy disclaimer to say in this time as well. And so again, we want to be a people in a community together that works with God as he works in us. And the way we do this is by not complaining, by not whining, by not grumbling. And the reason this is so important, which you've already alluded to a little bit, is what it says in verse 15. It says, so that, do not grumble, so that you may be blameless and pure, children of God without blemish, though you live in a crooked and perverse society, in which you shine as lights in the world. And so in this verse, beginning in verse, the very beginning of the verse 15, it says, so that, that's a purpose statement. He says, don't complain, don't grumble, for this purpose, that you will be blameless and pure. And again, what do these words mean? Blameless is above reproach, and pure is innocent. So essentially, Paul is saying the result, what you need to do is you need to progress in your spiritual maturity in Christ-likeness. And why does this matter so much? Because being blameless and pure, even in a culture that is not, ensures that there's no reason that someone can speak ill of us or of other Christians or of the church. It can be said that being blameless and pure makes sure that our behavior is above criticism. That's exactly what Paul's talking about in Philippians 1:27, when he says, live in a manner worthy of the gospel, that you are above criticism from those on the outside. And when we do that, when we live lives that are above criticism, we accomplish one of two things. Worshiping God, we worship God by being lights, by being above reproach, and we also witness to others. We're talking about worshiping God. Read with me 16 through 18. He says, we become lights in the world by holding on to the word of life, so that on the day of Christ, I will have a reason to boast that I did not run in vain nor labor in vain. But even if I'm being poured out like a drink offering on the sacrifice and service of your faith, I am glad and rejoice together with all of you. And in the same way, you also should be glad and rejoice together with me. And so Paul, in these three verses, is talking about boasting, but he's not saying this as a way to brag about like, I'm the greatest of the apostles and look at these great things that I brought forth in this church that I can take so much pride over. But really it's a boasting in what Jesus has done in his life, in the life of the Philippian church, as one who has served God and served the local church and served its purpose of seeing the gospel being spread into a dark and broken world. And the spreading of the gospel is something that is worth giving our lives to. It's worth doing the hard things of working with God and resisting complaining. It's worth it. There was a man in the first century, Ignatius of Antioch, who converted to Christianity and very quickly became a very prominent voice that was a source of encouragement to the local church, because in the first century, Christianity received a lot of persecution, a lot of pushback. And so Ignatius of Antioch was a bright light, an encouragement to the church in this time. And in his lifetime, the Roman emperor told Christians, basically, you have two choices: apostasy, renounce your faith, or death. And Ignatius was unwavered. He said, I choose death. And this is one of the last things that he says. He writes this in a letter. He says, for I would not have you to be men pleasers, but to please God, as indeed you do please him. For neither shall I myself ever find an opportunity such as this in persecution to attain unto God, nor can you, if you're silent, such a noble deed. For if you keep silent and spare me, I'm a word of God. But if you crave for my flesh, I shall again be a mere voice. No, give me nothing more than that I may be poured out as a libation to God, while there is still an altar ready, that forming a choir in love, you may sing to the Father in Jesus Christ. And the way that his story ends is that he stands firm in his faith, and he's thrown to lions and he's killed. But he counted it a joy to suffer in this way because he knew that it was worship to God. And Paul invites the Philippian church and us to view our lives as an opportunity to gladly and willingly offer up our lives, to live differently and sacrificially so that Christ can be worshiped in our lives and throughout the world. And not only is it worshipful to God, but it's also a way that we witness to others. Look back to verse 15, really the last couple of words. He says that you shine as lights in the world. And those three words, in the world, that's where God calls us to shine as lights, is in the world itself. So for the Philippians, their placement as foreigners, aliens, outcasts in a culture that does not agree with them, same for us. That is the exact place that God has placed them and us to be lights, because lights shine brightest in darkest places, even when those places are lonely and dangerous. And this dark world is exactly where we hold on to, or the imagery that it uses in this text is holding out a torch, like a bright torch in a dark room, the gospel of Jesus Christ, which is the word that brings light to our dark world. It brings life to our dead souls. It brings healing to our broken hearts, and it offers salvation through the sacrifice of Jesus Christ. That's what we're holding out as a light in a dark world. And this is what Jesus talks about in John 17 when he prays to God the Father, and he's talking about his disciples. He says, I've given them, my disciples, your word, and the world has hated them because they do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. I'm not asking you to take them out of the world, but that you keep them safe from the evil one. They do not belong to the world, just as I do not belong to the world. Set them apart in the truth. Your word is truth. Just as you sent me into the world, so I sent them into the world. And I set myself apart on their behalf so that they too may be truly set apart. So Jesus himself has set us apart and placed us specifically within the world, in our context, so we can be vessels for the light of the world, which is Jesus Christ. And working in college ministry, I feel like I'm surrounded by people who shine brightly, from cadets and freshmen and Bible study leaders, and even people on my college staff at Southwood, people who greatly encourage me and live bold lives in really dark places. And I have the privilege of having family who are really rich believers in Jesus, have rich relationships with him. But I get to read prayer cards all the time that we get on Sunday morning, or hear prayer requests from our staff before we go on break of like, hey, how can we pray for you? And I expect like sleep and rest and safe travels, and help me to not fall back into sins when I go back home. And we get those, and those are wonderful prayers, but I'm blown away by how many prayer requests I get of, help me be bold when I go home. Help me to have gospel conversations with my siblings. Help me to speak life to my dad and to my brothers so that they can see the light of Jesus in my life. And I'm sure many of you know people like that who have really hard circumstances that they go into day after day. And they are just incredible examples of holding out the hope of Jesus Christ, the light of Christ in those dark places. And here are some ways that I would encourage us as well to be witnesses, to be mindful of the words that we say, because when we complain, we constrain the gospel. When we whine, when we grumble, when we speak negativity even to those outside of us, it's not creating a bridge like we think it might be. It's actually creating a barrier for a gospel of hope and joy and forgiveness and grace and love to be spoken. And so be mindful of our words, and I'd encourage you to think about your spheres. Are there certain people or places that you go to where you find yourself more prone to complain? And even as you go back to work this week, or you see certain friends or community and you know that it's just easy, like we're just gonna get together and vent and spill the tea, pray before those moments of God, let us not speak divisive words or negative words or words that tear down other image bearers. Help us to speak life in those words. And also feed the good. Again, rather than trying to build a bridge by speaking in complaints and whining, let's find ways to speak positivity and compliments into conversation, not to be fake, but really just to shine the light of the gospel, the joy that we hold to, that we claim to have. And when we do this and we don't complain, we speak what is pleasant and positive. We get to shine bright. And so again, I want you to think about your life, where you are and who's around you. It's a good reminder for us that the places that we put lamps in our home, where we string up lights, is the places where it's actually darkest. And so even if your situation is not bright, you can make a decision to not complain, to not grumble, to look different, to not gripe. And people around you will notice that you are marked by something different. And they'll say, well, what's going on? Like, things at work are awful and our boss is a terrible person, and how do you just stay so cool and calm throughout all this? And that's an opportunity to show them the hope that you have, the joy that Jesus brings, the peace that we have in and through him. And so a way that I hope that you'll remember this is in this saying, don't whine and you'll shine. I know it's corny, but it's meant to be, so that we can remember it. If we want to be lights in the world, to our families, a delightful presence to be around, a non-anxious presence, and be examples in our workplace like I believe we desire to be. I think a really great step, yes, be in the word, be in prayer, worship in community, but let's nip complaining in the bud. Let it not be true of Creekside, of Grace Bible Church, that people can't say that, man, they're Christian, but they're whiny. Let that not be true of us in this church. And so 2 questions to pose to you. One, what is one area in your life where it's easy to complain? Again, it can be about a certain thing, a certain person. It can be a certain people that you complain to. That's just what y'all bond over. What's one area in your life where it's easy to complain? And I would encourage you just to practice some self-awareness in that area in your life. Again, be very prayerful, even today. Of God, help me to be a light to that person in that space. And second, who is one person in your life who can hold you accountable? It's great for us to be self-aware, but we also need someone to see the blind spots in our life. And so who is a trusted, a close and intimate friend who loves you and will listen to you, but also balances speaking truth into your life and will give you the hard truth, will faithfully wound you like a surgeon does. They're gonna cut out something harmful so they can heal you. Who's that one person that can hold you accountable? And as you sit down and you begin to refine and finalize all your goals and ambitions for this next year, including the great things that you want to do, the Bible reading plans, the prayer, the fasting, the community, the service, the hospitality, I'd love for you to consider how seemingly small but significant choosing to not complain could be, and how different you and your community and the world around you might look because of it. Let's pray. God, thank you that we're coming out of a season where we're celebrating the light of the world, God. That is still something to rejoice in, God. And just because it's a season that's past, God, let it not be something that we forget. Let us not forget that we are made to image a God who is light, God, and we've seen a great light. So God, let us be conduits of grace and hope and joy and light in our spheres of influence, in our homes primarily, but in our communities, in our Bible studies, in our church on Sunday mornings, in our neighborhood, in our workplaces, God. do the hard work within us, God. Maybe even bring to light certain places where we are prone to complain. And God, would you also put someone's name or face in our minds right now of someone that we need to call or tap their shoulder after church and say, we both want to be lights, and we both want to work with God as he works in us. And will you partner with me in doing that in my life? Will you speak the truth in love and let me know whenever I'm someone who needs to seek reconciliation or someone who's complained too much, God? And I just pray that out of all of our great ambitions and goals, that we would not be a people who try to work for our salvation, but that we work with you, God, because we are needy and desperate for it. But thank you that you are a gracious God who gladly works in and through your children, Lord. We pray all this in the name of your son, Jesus, by your Spirit. Amen.